Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the very belated first episode of this year for Britton's Hangout Hour. I am Britton. I am here today with another guest. This is the second conversation like this we've had because the first one had some technical difficulties. I am here with Jimmy Nuts, also known as.
How's it going?
Also
Glad
known.
to be here. This is take two, right?
Yeah, exactly. Also known as Fantasy Network. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So I have a YouTube channel called The Fantasy Network, and my name is Jimmy Nuts, and I do a bunch of book reviews over there, long-form conversations, spoiler discussions, top 10 list every now and then, not too often, but yeah, a lot of bookish content over there at The Fantasy Network, and been going about it for about 3.5 years, almost 4 years now, and it's been crazy. it's been wild.
Yeah, no, I was, I've been a fan of your channel for a little bit now. So, yeah, I actually watched your review of The Scar the other day.
Yes, it's right here. It's still sitting here from the review because I had it in the video.
Oh, you got the UK version? I have the, I think I have the Del Rey version right here.
Oh, nice.
This is my copy.
Yeah, I actually like that cover quite a bit. I did the UK ones because I really like the UK spines, like the different colors. I think they look really cool.
Yeah, no, I have the one for the city in the city. I don't want to pull it out right now, but yeah, I actually want to reread that one. That was my first China Mieville. I don't know if I'm also a fan of noir, so you know I enjoyed the city in the city, but I think I might have missed some stuff, so I want to read that again at some point.
Yeah, that's one I really want to read, as well as Embassy Town. Have you read that?
I own it. I'm actually hoping to read it this summer, but I haven't gotten to it yet.
Nice.
But yeah, you know, we had a conversation like this before. It just didn't work because I was on my old computer and it just wasn't working for whatever reason. I was actually trying something new and it just didn't work. So you know, oh well.
All good.
But you've had a history. You were a wrestler at one point.
Yes, I was a professional wrestler. Yes.
Yeah, we did talk about it a little bit before, but that's funny. So were you was it like an amateur, like, sort of WWE type of thing, or what was that?
Oh, I mean, yeah, so WWE would be the product that people are most familiar with when it comes to pro wrestling, but I was still a professional. I still traveled all around, got paid, and wrestled for tons of different organizations. I got to work for WWE quite a few times, which was awesome. Had a couple tryouts with them, and I got to wrestle for Ring of Honor, which, you know, at that time was probably the third biggest company in the world. And yeah, so it was a life before this one, and sometimes I forget that it was real.
Yeah, you're also like a software engineer, if I remember right, because I read like your channel.
I'm a developer, a software developer, and I also practice jiu-jitsu. I do a lot of stuff. I got a lot of different hats I wear in life. My favorite one is reader, though, for sure.
Yeah, I know you review books. You have a manga channel where you talk about Berserk, if I remember right.
Yes, Berserk for now, and then more manga down the road.
I saw you did a chat of Monster with Alan from Alexandria. I actually watched that stream. Yeah, I know we talked about Monster a little bit. I love that series. I think it's a really I think it's a really good. Like, I don't read a lot of manga. I'm more of like an American comics guy, but Monster just, you know, I'm like, wow, that was the one that kind of like Death Note. It was one that was like, wow, you know, manga is like more than just weird animation and Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, big mouths and eyes, right?
Yeah.
I have a couple friends that keep trying to get me to read One Piece, and I'm just like, their mouths are so big.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know why, but it like throws me off. It like plays with my head a little bit, but I agree. I think Monster is like the manga I recommend to people who are like have tried it in the past and didn't like it, or have never tried it, aren't sure whether they would. I think Monster is a great fit for that.
Yeah, no, it's not. I don't want to say it's not a typical manga, but it's more like realistic than a lot of other mangas ever. Like, the art style's more realistic. Like, it feels grounded.
Yeah, even the story is pretty grounded, right? It's basically a historical fiction in a lot of ways. going into that horror / thriller category, but it's not fantastical, really. So I think it's just a grounded story would probably be the best way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, it does, like, play... Like, it does play with, like, kind of a fantastical edge, but it's mostly hard in reality.
It's a lot of superstition, I would say.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe it, and it is unique in the manga world. I mean, a lot of people consider it to be, like, one of the best, if not the best, so...
Yeah, though I don't hear it, like, talked about as much as, like, Death Note or Attack on Titan, which, you know... I started reading Pluto from him in March. I just got... after Volume 4, I just kind of stopped because I got busy with, you know, life stuff. Also very good. So far, anyway. Shorter. I didn't want to read another epic after Monster. I'm like, okay, I'll just read Pluto. It's only 8 volumes long. I can do this, you know? Still very good.
I want to read Pluto. I am also going to be reading 20th Century Boys.
Ooh.
I got all those recently. Those covers are sick.
I have a buddy who read that first. I'm like, dude, are you crazy? I've heard that's one, like, you have to build towards. He's like, yep, I did it first because I'm a savage, you know?
That's awesome.
I'm like, yo, man. He's like, yo, dude, it's crazy. He also read Monster. I also saw the anime, which is very, very close to the source material, which is nice.
Yeah, the anime is really good for Monster. I really like it. It's back in that old, like, late 90s styles 4:3 aspect ratio. I love... Actually, I love the anime. I think it's really good. The funny thing is a lot of times people will tell you that, like, you know, one or the other has filler. And I always feel like people tell you to watch the anime instead of read the manga. At least that's how it always ends up coming across.
You can read either or. I mean, it's pretty much...
I think the reading experience for Monster is a little better. I actually think the pacing's better in the manga than the anime. I think the anime drags just a little bit in the middle. They're both great. They're both great. Like, if someone was like, well, I'm never going to read it, I would say then watch it, for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, they've even tried making a live-action show, which, you know, and
I would be down for that.
I wouldn't mind it, but, you know, it's kind of like, you know, but I digress. But yeah, Monster is it was one of my favorite reads last year. It's hopped up to one of my favorite, like, manga of all time.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite stories. I tell people all the time, regardless of medium, it's one of my favorite stories ever.
Yeah, no, it's such a great piece of storytelling, but it's also, like, great because it explores the dichotomy between a hero and a villain. That you know, Robert McGee, who's a screenwriter, once said, or somebody said, that a hero is just as good as the villain, and a good villain should be the exact opposite of the hero. And I think Monster nails that.
Yeah, and it's not like evil is there, but like it goes into like the cause of said evil and why it happens, and I think that's one of the more brilliant things about it. It also has just a phenomenal cast of characters.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
As well.
Oh my god, yeah. Tenma's underrated, man.
Yeah, I mean, dude, some of the side characters are honestly some of my favorite characters I've read. So.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, Grimmer is one of my favorite characters. Don't want to spoil, but really heartbroken what happened to him. He was you know, there was something that I think that was genuinely, like, just funny to say, kind of heartwarming about Grimmer, that he chose to do good even though he went through this horrible experience.
Yeah, it's a redemption arc in a lot of senses, right? Because,
yeah.
If you were to look and you see the things that went on in his life that he was numb to and had no reactions to and shed no tears for, you would think this guy's evil.
I know, but it's heart-wrenching, you know? It's like, and he's sad that he can't feel anything.
Yeah.
Though he can, kind of.
Yeah. It's a good commentary on, like, nature versus nurture, and can you overcome those things? Is it possible? There's a lot to Monster. I really implore people.
But yeah, I like how the characters mirror each other, like Tenma versus Johan, or as we learn later, Grimmer versus Roberto.
Yep.
Roberto's fucking nuts. I love how he just cracks bad jokes before he's killing people.
Roberto is a wild character, and I actually I think he's one of the better characters in the series. Like,
yeah, I know.
He's obviously a terrible person. I I don't know. I also like I just like his character model too. Like,
Yeah,
it looks like him being like.
I like how like ugly and like repulsive he is. Though there's also like I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah,
but
he's a pretty unique character, and I enjoy it.
But yeah, I saw that. I just really enjoy Monster. I think it's a great. I would love to review it at some point, but you know, I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, it's a little bit intimidating to think about doing a review of that because it's so big. Like there's so many volumes, so many different arcs, and so many different things to talk about.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, Johan is probably one of the most scariest villains of all time in anything.
Yeah, definitely a top antagonist.
Sure. And I think what makes him scary is he just is complete. It's not that he's like he is sadistic and malicious, but what makes him scary is that he's so indifferent to everything.
Yes.
Like he takes people's lives in the same way you would stomp on an ant.
Yeah, and also his motivations remain pretty nebulous throughout the entire thing. Too,
Yeah, exactly.
You're wondering why? Like, why is this happening?
Yeah, he's just and it's like that's the main question of the series though. Like, what makes a monster? What makes somebody into a monster?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
It's
appropriately titled.
Appropriately titled, yes. But yeah, it's great. I really enjoy it. It's funny in Pluto. There's also a character named Tenma, but that's also because it's a retelling of Astro Boy. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check out Pluto after 20th Century Boys, I think.
Good luck with 20th Century Boys. I've heard it's a very crazy series.
Yeah, I'm excited for
probably
it.
His craziest?
The covers of the manga. The covers are so cool.
Do you have those like big editions, like the big like books?
The Viz Perfect ones or whatever.
Yeah, those like little omnibuses. I read a lot of American comics. They call those like omnibuses or collected editions. Is it like the collected edition?
Yeah.
And it's like the big ones with their faces on it. Yeah, no, I really. It makes me wish that his art style was in color because I love his style. It's so realistic and grounded.
I agree. I think that's one of the reasons why the anime is so fun to watch, actually. Because
it's in color.
There's color to it. Yeah. Definitely.
But yeah, you also review books on your channel.
I do.
Mostly fantasy. But one of the things that I like about you, Jimmy, is that you seem like you're a very curious person. I could tell from your videos.
I am definitely curious, yes.
And you're not afraid to cover books that aren't in your wheelhouse, which is nice. Now, I mean, I haven't seen like a review for any of like McCarthy's work, for example, but you know, I like that you read them and you talk about them.
I'm in wrap-ups a lot of the times because there's multiple reasons for that, but one of the reasons why I haven't reviewed a McCarthy book is because I am a little intimidated by reviewing it.
That's fair.
It a review. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's fair. Yeah. No.
Because a lot of what McCarthy does is like a lineage of Faulkner and things from Moby Dick, Paradise Lost, like all these things that I haven't dove into, into deep details. So I think to do something that would be considered a review, I would have to have a lot of that context. I mean, of course, I can come at it from perspective. Hey, I'm a reader who doesn't know all these other references. But for me, I think I would like to be able to talk about that book in that a deeper way.
Yeah, no, I mean, McCarthy isn't for everyone. I mean, I've met people. I know he can be very hot and cold for people. I mean, I love him, but there's people I know who don't like him and have good reason for not liking him. Like, it's not just, he's very unusual because he doesn't use punctuation, syntax, anything like that. He just, what you see is what you get, and you kind of have to work. He makes you work for it.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of like it. And to be honest, it can be a break from fantasy, which a lot of fantasy can be right on the nose. A lot of fantasy can just be like, you know, easier to consume, I guess would be the way I would describe it. Now, there's also a ton of fantasy out there that is challenging, which is the stuff that I genuinely like a little bit more. But McCarthy's definitely a reprieve from having any idea what's really happening, and you have to kind of engage with the text. And I think you can read McCarthy at a surface level, and I think the people who do, outside of like The Road and No Country for Old Men, read his works and go, okay, like what was the point? But if you go a little bit deeper, like if you go just an inch deeper on that, man, there's a wealth of conversation and knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, Blood Meridian, it took me like 2 or 3 times to really get what it was trying to say, because it's gratuitous. And it's meant to be. Like, I know, you watch Mike's book reviews? Aren't you guys, like, acquainted? Or am I mistaken?
I'm sorry?
Are you guys acquainted, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, I know Mike. Yeah, I was on a stream with him probably about a year ago for... Man, what was it that we talked about? I think it was Steve Talks Books. I think we did, like, a Friday conversation.
Oh, that's right. Together. That's right. Yeah, I know he didn't like Blood Meridian because he's like, dude, these guys are just killing people. It's ridiculous. And I'm like, yeah, like I said, it's gratuitous and it's purposeful. It's very like, you know, I mean, the judge is a character kind of like Johann in that way, but instead of his complete indifference, he's just a character of pure malice.
Yeah, and the judge is one of the more fascinating questions in the book. I love Blood Meridian, but when someone comes back and says this sucked, or I didn't like it, or I don't get it, I never blame them.
Yeah, I get it.
I literally recommend it to people.
I get it, man. I understand it. You know, it's a book that, I mean, I would definitely say like The Road or No Country is a good place to start. All the Pretty Horses would be a pretty good place to start too.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like even Child of God, which I would say is my least favorite of his books so far. I actually want to read it again to see if because I don't know if I was in, I don't know if I was in the proper mood to read that one, but
yeah, it's rough.
It's really messed up.
It really is. I mean, it has to be some of the better character work that McCarthy's done. It's just unfortunate that character is nauseating to read about because he's terrible. In some ways, that's one of McCarthy's best works, like in writing-wise, I think.
Probably one of the nastiest books he's written, I would say, along with like Blood
Meridian. Dark yet. Have you read Outer Dark?
No, I have not. So we are.
That's up next for me, and I'm very curious because I've heard many people say it's his darkest book, and I'm like, if it's darker than Child of God,
if it's darker than Blood Meridian, I'll give you money. Like
yeah, it's gonna be hard to top those two.
I'll Venmo you. But yeah, I appreciate that. I know you read Ubik from Philip K. Dick. I have that over there. I haven't read it though. It's I haven't read it yet because again I'm a mood reader, you know, so I like to read when it hits me, you know. I'm like, I really want to read some PKD, you know, like that's you know. I like his stuff. My favorite of his is A Scanner Darkly. I think that's a fantastic book.
That's the next one I'm going to read from him.
Very strange, but probably in my opinion his most moving book.
Yeah, that's on my TBR for this year. Actually, I'm excited to read it.
Yeah, it's a really good book. But yeah, you like fantasy. I know you're a big Game of Thrones fan, as am I. Though I'm kind of also disappointed that George isn't finished yet, and I don't know if he'll be finished. So that's the kind of sad part. But you know.
Yeah, we'll never see Dream of Spring. Never. We'll see Winds of Winter. We won't see Dream of Spring.
You think he'll finish it with Winds of Winter? Just say fuck it, or no?
No, there's no way. There's literally no way. I mean, unless if it was just terrible, which would suck. But I think in his head, he's just thinking, like, this is the series, this is what I gotta do. I think Winds, there's so much of it written that even if something unfortunate were to happen and George just retired from writing tomorrow, they would release a version of Winds of Winter, like, no matter what happened. But Dream of Spring, I just think it's the easier book to write out of the two, actually, to be honest. But I just don't see it happening. I I don't see it. He's involved in so many other things. Tough.
That's true. Yeah. I know you read the First Law, which I actually just completed this last month, and I have to say it's very rare for a book to get like a visceral reaction out of me, but I was pretty mad after the ending of that book. I'm like, well, that's not fair at all. Fuck you, Joe Abercrombie. I do have Best Served Cold, though. I do hope to read that.
Best Served Cold's a great revenge tale. I really like it. I like all the standalones. I know the standalones are where people are like really up and down. Like, some people hate the heroes. Some people think it's his best work, and you could say that you could apply that to almost any of the standalones.
Red Country is one I'm looking forward to because I'm curious to see him take on a western. Though it was spoiled for me who Lamb is, so. It got spoiled for me who Lamb was, so I'm like, dang, that sucks. But anyway.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because that is, in my opinion, like one of the best moments in First Law. Also happens to be why Red Country is my favorite standalone. Though the heroes, it is hard for me to like not just gush over the heroes for the sole fact that I just love that it's a war book where like everyone's just standing around for 300 pages because that's what war is a lot of the times.
Yeah, no, I know you might get mad at me for this, so you know,
I doubt I'm gonna be mad. I doubt that.
I will say I do think Abercrombie kind of does Martin's shtick better than him. The whole grimdark thing, I think he does grimdark better. I'll put it that way.
Okay, I could kind of see that because I think that grimdark is one. Like I don't even really know what that means anymore. Like
yeah, I know. I don't really like that term, but you know, it is what it is.
And I think Abercrombie is going the extra mile with like that vibe. Whereas George, the funny thing about Song of Ice and Fire is that it is still going to end up being a hero story.
Yeah, no, I think
heroes in A Song of Ice and Fire, whereas in First Law there are no heroes, in my opinion. Like, and if there are, they fail.
Well, it's really hard to be a hero in First Law because it almost seems like the world actively makes you worse.
I agree with that, yeah.
Like, for all of Glocta's angst, he realizes by the end of the series, it's better to be a monster. It's better to play up the fact that people think he's just disgusting cripple, and like we know he's more than that, but he just is like. He realizes it's just better to be a monster, better to kind of play up the evil cripple that they think he is.
Yeah, even though there's a lot more hope in A Song of Ice and Fire than there is in First Law.
I mean, Baez just wins, and spoilers by the way, but you know he just wins, and I'm like, Jazal. Never thought I'd feel sorry for him, but he's the one who just gets the piss end of it by the end.
Yeah, Jazal is really good. I see some people are usually pretty lukewarm on him in book 1, but from book 2 on, he's just phenomenal.
Yeah, no, it's odd. I didn't hate him as much in the first book as people were like meant to. It's just like I don't know. It's like yeah, he's a smug prick, but he's but it's almost like he doesn't know any better. I feel.
Yeah,
and I actually was like, I was actually touched that he was like. Falling for Artie.
That doesn't end up going too well though.
That doesn't end well, no. And he becomes like one of the most like by the end of the series, he is one of the people who's like most concerned with doing the right thing, and fails.
Yeah.
Harshly.
If you try to do the right thing, you're gonna fail almost.
Like I thought it was a really disturbing scene when Baez kind of puts Jazal in his place. Like I was like squirming in my seat when I read that. Like I'm not kidding. It's just
yeah. Baez is a monster, man.
He is. He's a
such a good character though.
Yeah, I know.
A good version of the old wise wizard trope.
Yeah, I know. I remember in our first conversation, you described him as if Gandalf had the One Ring, and I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder what he means. And then book 3 happens. I'm like, and I text you. I'm like, is that what you meant when you said that? And you're like,
yeah. Oh man, I've been really wanting to reread the first trilogy because it's the one I remember the least amount of details about. Like, I remember the standalones pretty damn well, and I remember all the new trilogy very, very well because it was recently. But I would like to go back and reread the first trilogy.
I'll ask you this: does the second trilogy, like, is there at least some people who get their comeuppance that didn't in the first Law trilogy? Like Baez?
That's a hard question to answer because it depends on the perspective of the reader. A lot of things change. Like, it's like 20 years in the future, I believe. A lot of things have changed. So you'll have to see. I think that the new trilogy is much better plotted. I think that it's way tighter, and the characters are just as good. So, like,
yeah, I was about to say,
there's a lot of new characters.
in the first Law, like, it's not that plot driven.
No.
It's more just character driven, you know, character interactions, which, you know, I'm a sucker for, so, you know, I'm there for that. But, yeah, no, but yeah, I'm like, you know, Joe Abercrombie, I'm mad at you, and I'm taking a break from Joe Abercrombie right now, because, you know, in April I read Before They Were Hanged, in May I read, or this month, in April I read, Last Argument of Kings. I finished it in May, so I'm going to take a break from him for a little bit.
Nice.
Before I read Best
Served
Served
Cold.
Cold.
I think you could take a break before the standalones. I did. I think. I can't really remember now. I think I did.
I also binged Berserk, though it's hard for me to keep track of my Goodreads because I don't freaking want to put all of that down because there's so much.
Yeah, it's a lot. 41 volumes in the U.S. so far.
Hell, that series is so dark. Like, Joe Abercrombie would probably be like, "Damn, dude, I think you're going a little too far."
That's the darkest thing I've come across.
It is so messed up. Like, I know we talked about Berserk a little bit in our last chat, but bro, that Lost Children arc scarred me for life. I'm not even kidding. It is one of the most fucked things I have ever read in my life. It's just
Miura goes there.
Oh my god! I'm just like, I'm like, how did you come up with this? On the one hand, I'm just like, oh god. Like, everyone's always like, oh man, the eclipse. That's where it really gets fucked. I'm like, dude, Lost Children. And I read that before I went to sleep one night, so I'm like, fuck. That's a terrible idea. Don't do that.
Yeah, my hot take is that I think Berserk is actually better after the Golden Age arc. Like, if you go look at, like, the discussion around Berserk, most people have only read up to the Golden Age arc, but I think a lot of the stuff that comes post it, one is just as tragic, and two is even better, especially where it leaves off, where Miura leaves off in the last volume. Man, it is intense stuff. I love Berserk so much.
Yeah, like, I like the art because it's so detailed and it's not super anime. It does certainly kind of have those big muscled anime guys at points, but I like the detail of Miura's artwork.
He's masterful. I mean, some of the best art I've ever seen, and it gets better. That's the other thing about Golden Age. I love it. It has great art, but, like, the art that comes in Millennium Falcon and then Fantasia arc, that art is, I put against anything.
I stopped at the one with the creepy priest with that, like, fucking big face, and he looks like the judge.
Or whatever his name is.
He looks like the judge.
Yeah. Oh, you're just getting into it, man. That's Millennium Falcon. Yeah. So you got a lot of good stuff ahead of you. Oh.
I was texting my friend who was like, "Hey, go read Berserk," and then I poked him right back. I'm like, "Hey, go read Monster," and he's like, "Okay, I will eventually. I'm in the military, so."
Yeah, I've read. So I'm caught up on Berserk for the stuff that's actually.
Like, he didn't get to the Lost Children arc. I'm like, dude, it is so fucked. Like, oh.
Yeah.
Or no, he's in the middle of it right now. I'm like, oh my god, dude.
You know, a lot of people say the reason why Berserk doesn't have a full-fledged adaptation is because they.
How could you get away with all that?
Yeah, they don't know if they could adapt that arc. They'd probably have to have some sort of edits to it. But I don't know. In today's age, like, maybe you'd be able to do it. Streaming services kind of let anything go.
It's kind of like making a Blood Meridian movie, though. They're certainly trying right now. They just announced it, so.
Yeah, so they're gonna give it a go. We'll see what happens with it. I mean, if it's good, that's great. If it's bad, it's not like it's gonna ruin Blood Meridian. You know, it's probably the best American novel ever written. Like, and sometimes things are just better as books. Like, I think
That's true.
Meridian, I don't know if Blood Meridian's gonna work on screen.
Yeah, I mean, again, how are you gonna get away with all the stuff they do in that book? I don't know.
And a lot of
without it being like
and the references and stuff. I don't.
No, I mean, John Hillcoat's a great director for sure. Proposition's a great film, and he also did The Road, which was a great adaptation of that.
Oh, good. Such a good movie.
Also love the book as well. It's I like how it's kind of styled. It's a friend of mine and I were discussing it the other day because he did a read along on his channel, and he described it. He's like, you're kind of there with them. There's no chapters because it's just them wandering around. You know, there's not really.
Yeah, moment to moment.
Yeah, moment to moment, exactly.
Yeah.
I think my next McCarthy book might be Suttree, though I'm a little intimidated by that book. I asked you if you had read it, and you said it was phenomenal, so.
Yeah, it's my second favorite McCarthy book, and I think it is every bit as good as Blood Meridian for a lot of different reasons. Like, it's not the same book, it's not even close to Blood Meridian. It is a meandering, damn near, you know, as little plot as you could possibly have, character work, and also supposedly semi-autobiographical.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah, of Cormac's life. But, you know, you're just in the Tennessee River and on a boat, and I don't know. That book is incredible, though. If you want to talk about heartstrings, whew, man. Teared me up at one of the scenes, so.
But yeah, yeah, I mean, McCarthy's one of my favorite authors, so, yeah. I mean, I read, like, oh, man. I remember when I first saw a poster for the film version of The Road, and I was just like, what is that? I was, like, 8 at the time. And then I was a little older when I read The Road, and I was like, man.
Yeah, it's a pretty grim, talking about grim works, I mean, there's some grim moments in there.
Yeah, you also read, I also appreciate that you've covered the Bas-Lag trilogy on your channel, because not a lot of people have done. I mean, I've covered the Perdido, Street Station, and the Scar on my channel, but it's kind of it's an underrated gem, I think. Though I didn't love Iron Council as much as I did the first two.
Yeah, I'm reading Iron Council in June. Everyone has told me that it's not as good, but we'll see. Maybe I'll like it. I like that it's shorter. I'm happy about that.
I mean, I don't want to like scare you away from the book, but yeah, no, it's not. It's more experimental than the other two in terms of the storytelling.
Yeah, I've heard it's the complaint I hear is that it's lacking a compelling plot. That's what I've heard, but we'll see how I react to it. I'll probably be reading about a month's time, actually. So hopefully I can do a review for that as well.
Though it was nice to go back to New Crobazon, because as disturbing a place as it is, I kind of missed it in the Scar. I was kind of like Bella, so I'm like, oh. I miss all the...
Bella, so no. Yeah, I love the Scar, and I was very...
I heard you said you liked it more than Perdido. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I liked it more than Perdido. Yep.
Which is funny. I mean, I still prefer Perdido, but I find with the Scar, I think about it more when I was away from it. Because
out of the two, I would reread the Scar first.
Yeah, no, I mean, Perdido is why I like it so much. I love how it's adventurous in tone. Like, you want to see more of this place, even though you would never want to live there. I would never want to live there.
I want to live there. It seems like it smells bad.
That's what throws you. That's the deal breaker.
Dude, you can smell it when you're reading.
I know. Yeah, I know. That's why I love it. It's
thick, gross, grime.
I wouldn't like to live there because Remade is horrendous, and it's fucking terrifying to live. Like, you could get your soul or your consciousness sucked out by slake moss if you're unlucky.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place.
It's a dangerous place. It's a hazardous place to live in. That's why I was in Armada. I'm like,
none of the fantasy elements of those books are like gleeful. They're all horrifying.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just But it's funny though. I like how it's kind of it's whimsical and like, yo, look how cool this is. But it's also like, this is really scary. You don't want to play here.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, it's just, you know, Armada seems like a much better place to live in. Even, you know,
it has its it has its problems. So let's be honest.
That's true. That is true. But a lot of it is kind of left up in the air. I'm curious what you thought of the ending of the Scar.
Oh, I loved it. So good, so good. Mieville does the best endings,
bro.
Because it just throws the whole story on its head.
Man, Tanner's like last monologue is just, oh my god, it broke my heart. It really did. I love Tanner's character. Tanner was probably one of my favorite characters in the story.
Yeah, he was my favorite for sure. I just thought the whole story got better with the ending, which what else can an ending really do to be great, right?
I like how there was that big build up to this big fight, and then the next chapter is after the fight's over.
I can see why some people might feel like that's anticlimactic, but for me it worked.
Hey, we had an awesome sea battle. That was I mean, it was horrifying and messed up, but I loved it. It was just a...
Yeah.
It was
just doesn't have any weaknesses.
It's just a pew, 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 pew. Yeah, no, it was, yeah. I like sea battles. But yeah, I enjoy this. But it's funny because I enjoyed the Scar the more I thought about it. I liked it when I read it the first time, and I'm like, man, it doesn't have that same energy that Perdido did. But then I thought about it, I'm like, man, that was a really good story and a good world too. Characters are great. Not to say the characters in Perdido aren't great, but like, I've been trying to get my friend to read Perdido Street Station for a while, because I think, I mean, I don't know, maybe he'd like it, but he's super picky about what he reads. I'm like, one half is, like, character development, and, like, here's this really crazy world, and then, like, the second half is, like, where the plot really kicks into gear. He's like, oh, so there's no plot for 30% of it? I'm like, god damn it, you kill me! Just read it! Stop talking.
Sometimes things take a while to set up, you know, you gotta trust the process.
Though the ending of Perdido, I think, really is what sold me on, like, yep, this is a great book. I love it. The ending of the Scar is great too, but Perdido just really made me think. Just like, man, like, it really makes you think about, like, how is punishment justice, and when is it justice and when is it punishment, with the character of Yagharik, I think.
There's a lot of questions in Perdido about morality and like what you owe to somebody and what's redemption, and Mieville's always asking questions.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's part of his books.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But yeah, Bas-Lag is quickly shot up as one of my favorite fantasy worlds of all time. I know you've said the same. Which I appreciate, because I'm like, this is so good.
Yeah, very underrated.
Oh my gosh, it is. Like, more people should read this. Like, I really do think so. Like, if you're bored with, like, the swords and sorcery stuff, I mean, China Mieville's, you know, that's best bet.
Yeah, he's just over there making a masterpiece. Unfortunately, I don't think he's ever going to return to it, which sucks.
I've heard he's kicked around a couple of ideas for more Bas-Lag books, but he hadn't, like, settled on one, which sucks, because, man, Bas-Lag is such a rich world with
it seems like he kind of is turned off by it. Like, he talks about the books in a very negative way when he talks about them, which is a little unsettling and upsetting, but he seems to feel like the Bas-Lag books, like, he kind of looks at them as his, like, first attempts at writing, and that he's like, you can kind of tell that it's a writer who doesn't know what he's doing, and I'm like, that's funny, because I think they're awesome.
I think they're his best. I think they're his best work. I mean, I read The City in the City, which you could say is like a more polished work, but it doesn't quite have the magic of Perdido. Which, don't get me wrong, it's a good book. I enjoy it. It's a very trippy concept, though. I still don't entirely get the idea of The City in the City.
Those are the best kind of books.
Yeah, I know. It's like he Philip K. Dick's interesting that way too. That's why I like his work, because he's just so trippy, and he just thought about the world in a way that most people just don't.
Yeah,
he also might have been crazy.
A lot of hard drugs. There's no way that dude was sober.
He also might have been mentally ill. I have a feeling he was mentally ill somewhere.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of artists in history that have suffered with mental illness that made some great works, and people I think are always trying to measure like how much that plays into the creativity or the creative process. Even I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I mean, there are those books that really make me think about fantasy and how fantasy is written, because there's sort of a formula to fantasy. I mean,
it depends on what fantasy you're talking about, right?
Well, epic fantasy, I guess you could say. Would you call would you call Bas-Lag epic fantasy?
No. I don't think I would. But I don't know why. Because it has all the world building, it has a massive cast of characters, it expands across different cities, maybe even continents, as far as I know. So, like, I don't know, maybe it is epic fantasy, maybe I'm wrong.
Like, the first one is more like, people call it urban fantasy, but it's kind of like a twisted take. But it's more of like, it kind of blends genres. It's part sci-fi, part, like, urban fantasy, then it gets, like, cosmic horror. It's crazy.
Yeah, he definitely does horror very well. No doubt. I don't know. He gets classified in new weird with like Clive Barker and other people, which I think is pretty fitting. But I think when people throw those labels on certain authors, it almost goes under the radar for fantasy genre fans. But I don't know. Maybe it is epic fantasy. It's a good question.
Yeah, he sort of defies genre in a lot of ways.
He's just a creative. He's just an author and.
Yeah.
For me, like Bas-Lag is as good as Middle Earth or Westeros. Or
I was about to say it's just as vivid as something like Middle Earth is.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And some people might, which is funny because I know Mieville kind of is wanting to step out of Tolkien's shadow a little bit.
Yeah, he doesn't. I don't know if he has the most favorable view of Tolkien, from what I understand. But I haven't read all of his essays yet, so I have to see.
I have seen some of his comments, like, he's kind of softened over time, but, he likes doing his own thing.
Yeah.
Like, they're actually selling, like, his first novel at my local bookshop, King Rat. I haven't read it. I've heard it's...
Nice.
But, I was just thinking, he makes me, like, I was reading this book called, I finished up this book called The Vor recently, which is another really, like, unusual fantasy book. It was kind of like Mieville, just he made me consider like how fantasy could be written, if that makes sense.
Oh no, it definitely makes sense, and also it's just nice whenever somebody does, like you said, there is formulas, there's a recipe for a lot of fantasy, and even in the way that it's written. So when someone steps outside of that, of the box, we'll call it, it's refreshing, and it also breeds a area where someone can like grow into their own niche, and really solidify themselves as a unique person in the genre, which that's what Mieville did to a T, I think.
I mean, we do have the more standard fantasy. There are good writers in the more standard fantasy, like Joe Abercrombie we were talking about.
Oh, certainly.
I just said that. George R. R. Martin, even though I do have problems with his writing. Robert E. Howard, J.R.R. Tolkien, of course. There's other writers I'm thinking of. I can't think of at the moment, but there are writers in the.
There's a ton.
Like there are writers in the standard in the more like standard, you could say, fantasy that are good, but I do appreciate when people. I find the fantasy I appreciate the most is the one that really steps out and tries to pave its own path. Like books like I read one called Black Leopard, Red Wolf, which is an amazing.
I just bought that.
Which is an amazing African-inspired fantasy. A lot of people call it African Game of Thrones, which was funny. It was a joke. that Marlon James made that kind of just blew up. It's more like China Mieville doing an African fantasy, kind of Conan the Barbarian type of story.
Nice, yeah, I bought book 1. I'm actually hoping to read it this year at some point.
Oh, it's amazing. It's a fantastic. It can be a little difficult because the storytelling style is based in, like... I'll admit, I don't know too much about African myth, but I do know the storytelling. Like, I know a little bit. It can throw you off a little bit. Very sensual, much like China Mieville's work.
Nice.
I would compare him to China Mieville because he thinks big. He goes for it. And American Gods as well from Neil Gaiman. I love that book. Yeah, I'm always looking for fantasy that like challenges my perception on how fantasy could be written.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I tend to seek that stuff as well.
Which, you know, I guess I read the Liza Lachlan Mora, which blew me away. I loved that book. I thought it was really good. I know I told you the last time we were talking I was about to read it. I did read it, and I really enjoyed it. I'm actually reading... I actually just started the second one last night. So.
I like the second one, too. I like it a lot.
Love it. I think it's a very unusual take. Mieville-esque at times reminded me of Mieville, just in terms of the vastness of the... It's not as weird, but it does have the vastness. Like, you can envision... Like, it's very... Like, it engages your senses.
I really like his writing.
I love how he describes things, too. Yeah.
Yeah, he uses a lot of alliteration, which I'm a fan of, and his descriptions are actually pretty solid for me, and I'm not someone that visualizes a lot when I read. But overall, he just has a really strong tone, and any author that has a tone, even if I don't like the tone, I respect that, because there's so many authors that go through for years and never find one.
I remember you said in your Perdido Street Station review that you was it that you kind of struggled with it because you're not a visual guy?
Correct. Yeah.
That's funny. I am a visual guy, so you know I was lapping that up.
I'm the exception. I think most people are visual readers. I just, for whatever reason, I can't seem to visualize anything when I read, which sucks.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I read the Liza Lachlan Mora. Really enjoyed that. A lot of people kind of call it dark. It's not. I don't think
it's that dark.
Like,
I think it's pretty heartwarming. With there's consequences and stuff.
Like, it can get messed up, but it's not like, you know, Joe Abercrombie where I'm angry at the ending of his book.
Yeah, I certainly don't think the tone of it is meant to be as bleak as something like A First Law, for instance.
And it's, you know, say one thing for Britton Summers. He always expects something different from his books. Because I guess I'm more of a romantic at heart, and Joe Abercrombie is not.
Not even a little bit.
That's not to say he's completely heartless. Like, there is a lot of emotion in First Law.
There's a lot of humanity, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Glock is probably my favorite character in First Law, which, you know, wow, very surprising. But he's such an interesting character because you think he'd be the villain because he's first introduced. You're like, yeah, this guy's super sinister. He might be the villain, and nope, he's a very complicated person. Like, he's not a good guy, but he's this jerk who wants to be a better person. Which ultimately I think is what the First Law is about people who want to do better, but they can't. Because... Yeah, I
always said it's people doing their best for where they're at.
Yeah, no, it's about people who want to do, like, better, who want to be better, but, like, because of their flaws, personality-wise, or just circumstances, they can't.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it tragic by the end of the series.
Yeah, and it's also just the hopelessness of fighting against, like, systems in a world that doesn't want to see you succeed, that rewards the bad side of you more than the good side. It's a tough place.
I mean, you know, I mean, Baez turns out to be just a monster. And, oops, you helped him grow more powerful. Good job, guys. You done good. You done good.
Consolidation of power.
And, Logan, basically, I like how he's basically, what would Conan be like in a more realistic setting, which would be scary. Though he also has a lot of soul, too.
Oh, yeah, I like Logan a lot. I would say he's probably my favorite character from the first trilogy, if I had to pick one.
Yeah, no, I like the dichotomy, how he can be like this kind of goofy dad, and then at other points he's just this monster. And I like how he leaves it vague if it's like a genuine like supernatural thing or if Logan's just crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot more supernatural stuff in book 1 that kind of just gets abandoned.
I know, that's one of my issues. It's just like, he can talk to spirits. Oh, that just gets dropped. And then like in the third book, he's like, and then the third, like the spirits are just like, hey, if we're a part of this, we're a part of Logan's character, and I'm like, damn. I'm like, that's stupid. Why'd you introduce that if you weren't gonna use it? Like, come on. I'm not a Brandon Sanderson fan, but like I know like one of his rules is, hey, if you're gonna introduce a magical element, use it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe in that rule, but I do think it's pretty noticeable in First Law that it kind of gets dropped, and you're like, what happened to that?
Well, it's because like his more like just, you know, as we kind of get to see the two sides of him clash. I find it interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Even like Pharaoh, who's one of my less favorite characters, because
Nobody likes Pharaoh. No.
Yeah, not a lot of people like Pharaoh, but I felt sorry for her by the end, because she's sort of.
I think I enjoy Pharaoh more than most people. She's 2D character for the most part. And I say for the most part because I do think she gets a little bit more well-rounded as the story goes on, but she's never as well-rounded as the other characters.
Yeah, I agree.
Many people dislike Pharaoh.
Though she does end her story in like a really dark place.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Logan. It's just like, why the fuck did he keep Black Dow around? That's one of the things I'm like, that dude, I sniffed that betrayal. From the first book, I sniffed that guy was gonna fucking backstab somebody at some point.
Old Black Dow.
Say something about Logan Nine Fingers. Say he's soft-hearted. For the worst people.
Yeah.
He's like...
Bad decisions.
It's... like, the other guys are pretty cool. Like, the other guys he hangs out with are pretty cool. Black Dow, why did he... Like, he's like, he even goes like, I should have killed you. Like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
why did I keep you alive? He's like, I don't know. Yeah, no, it's, but yeah, there's so much, like, character stuff, and I mean, that's what I like at the end of the day, character drama. I think is what keeps a book interesting, or any type of story, for that matter. And, I mean, there's just, like, what do you think? Like, do you think, like, the Bloody Nine is a genuine, like, supernatural presence, or do you think he's just crazy?
It has to be one or the other, necessarily, but if I had to guess, it does seem like some supernatural element, right? Because he not only just gets mean, but he also seems to be able to perform better, like an enhancement of sorts. So that does feel like some sort of, like, external power. I would like to reread the trilogy and maybe go into it trying to think about that a little bit more and try to decipher it, because I just remember in the first read through trying to figure out what would happen, but it's a solid question.
Yeah, it's really strange, because you could argue either way, that, you know, either A, he's just insane, or B, there is something else going on.
Yeah.
I do think it might be supernatural, but I think it might be like a supernatural, what can I say, like, enhancement of, like, the violence and rage that's already inside of him, in a way. That's kind of what I think it is. I don't know if that I could be on something. Joe Abercrombie's like, I'm not fucking saying a thing. So.
Yeah, those are definitely questions that he's willing to leave up to the reader.
Though, I am curious. Is Logan in the new trilogy at all?
I can't answer that.
Oh. Okay.
I can't answer that.
Okay.
You gotta find out about for yourself.
Okay. But yeah, no, I think, but yeah, I finished the first law, and like, I don't know how you felt, but I was pretty pissed off. I'm like, really? I knew it probably. Now I knew it's a great ending, but it just like it's just the unfairness of it all. You know, it's just like, yeah, you know.
I just loved how deflating it all felt.
Oh, like you're almost like a kid. You know, have you ever seen those cartoons where the kid goes like on the floor?
Yeah, it's
I was
reading other stuff, you know, that was very formulaic fantasy at the time. So to get a deflating ending like that, I was like, I love it.
No, I mean, it's a great ending. Like, it's a really great just punch to the gut. Like, it works, you know, because I was like, I felt awful by the end. I originally thought, because I was kind of looking up stuff to kind of, you know, get me in the mood to read it, and it was spoiled that, like, Baez is a villain, so I'm like, oh, so are they just going to, like, fight him, and then they, like, beat him, but it's, like a tremendous personal cost? Because that's how I thought it was going to end, but I was definitely not expecting that ending.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people were.
But yeah, no, he's a very scary man.
With a whole lot of power.
Yeah, I know. That's what makes him even more scary. And then him and Glockter are like, "Hey, I like you. You can be my guy." And Glockter's like, "Fuck this. Okay." But yeah, no, Glockter, again, he's my favorite character because I don't know if he really changes. He does. But it's sort of one of those things, like, he changes by realizing that he's kind of trapped in this.
Yeah, I think, again, he's going to do the best for where he's at to survive. Like, he has to do what he has to do. But he definitely has more perspective on the world.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of like if Jaime Lannister had the wit of Tyrion. Sort of. Or... I think... He's like an even more jaded Jaime Lannister than and Jaime's pretty jaded already.
Interesting. I would definitely put him more into the Tyrion camp, like wholly into the Tyrion camp.
Yeah.
Especially Tyrion in A Dance with Dragons.
Yeah, definitely he has Tyrion in him. I know Joe's a big fan of Song of Ice and Fire as well, so he's, you know, but yeah, I know it's weird because Glockta is in a different position than he was he is different, like in a different position from where he was at the beginning of the story. Mm-hmm. Like his mindset, I don't know, it's odd. It's not. I don't want to say he doesn't really change through the story, but it's more like he realizes he can't change.
Yeah, and Joe Abercrombie does like circular arcs, which some people have a problem with, but I personally actually end up liking them quite a bit because, like, even if it is kind of circular, like, there's no way that the same person they were at the beginning, even if they're doing the same things, they might be doing those things for different reasons. So circular arcs work really well for me.
I will say though, the kind of Pike reveal just sort of came out of nowhere. He's like, "Hey, I'm the guy," and Glockta's like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that guy. Oh, want to go torture a guy? Want to go torture my asshole boss?" He's like, "Yeah." And it's just like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Don't we all?
I hope your boss isn't like Arch Lecter's Salt.
No, my boss is a good dude, actually, thankfully.
No, what's funny is I kind of imagine Salt as like a fat guy for some reason.
Interesting.
I just imagine him as this like blustering, like he's always sweating, kind of fat dude. I don't know why, and like I've seen like pictures of him, and
I don't have any image
which is funny because he's like I've seen like illustrations of him, and he's like this really lean and mean kind of old man. I'm like, that's not at all how I saw him, but you know. I like how he's always like trying to like do these like gambits and they just fail.
Yeah.
Also Casca is fun, though. I kind of think of him, he's kind of like if Braun was like more of a jerk than he already is. I don't know what you think of Casca. You know, I know he gets a lot of
phenomenal.
I know he gets a lot of playtime in the standalones.
Yeah, I'm a big fan and enjoy watching him every time he's on screen.
I like him and Glocta's interactions. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm here to serve," and I love how he's always throwing his fucking knives, and they always fail. It's like a great gag. I'm just like, oh, I'm like, oh, jeez, maybe he's not as good at his job or as he thinks he is.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's like a player in Best Served Cold, and I think he's in Red Country. I heard he was in Red Country.
I can neither confirm or deny these facts.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's an interesting. Like, there's other fantasies I've considered. I haven't really jumped into yet because I'm a weird guy. I don't really like longer series. I'll make exceptions. You know, Game of Thrones, for instance. I enjoy that. That's because it was good. You know, even though again I have some issues with George's stuff. Don't get mad at me.
I'm furious.
Like Wheel of Time, I'm kind of hesitant to try that. Malazan, I'm hesitant to try that because there's just so many.
Yeah, but if they're good, what does it matter, right?
Well, yeah, of course, but it's just kind of. I have a harder time getting myself to read those. Is the point I'm making?
Yeah, big undertaking.
Yeah, it's just not that I'm against reading them. It's just, you know, I find it harder to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna read this, and you know, I have people I know who love Malazan, and I have people who don't really like it. So you know, I know you're acquainted with the author, Steve Erickson.
He's awesome. Big fan.
Yeah, I know. I've heard it. I know he got into like some flack a few years ago because, I always heard he was kind of a jerk, and I've seen like videos of him, and I'm like, he seems like a nice guy.
He's a great guy. He's extremely compassionate and passionate about his work and about the craft. And I don't know if I can think of an author who puts more thought into the themes that he explores than Steven Erickson. And I have nothing but good things to say about him.
Yeah, no, it's weird because I've heard he's kind of a jerk, and I'm like, I watched like videos of like interviews of him. I'm like, he seems like a nice guy. You know,
it's always better to make your own opinion of people, right?
Yeah, no, it's just, you know, you seem to be chummy with him, so.
No, he's a great guy. He's very gracious, and you know, he loves interacting with people who want to interact with him. And yeah, I think he's written one of the greatest fantasy series of all time.
Yeah, maybe I'll get to Malazan one day, but I've heard it's a very large undertaking because.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that.
There's no series that's even close to it in scope. Like when we're talking about this, like world building, like the width. And
even Bas-Lag.
Oh yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not even close. There's nothing close to the scope of it. Nothing.
Yeah, I've heard the world building's great and the characters are really neat and it gets really fucked up. So I'm like, all right.
There's definitely some darkness in Malazan, no doubt.
I'm like, all right, maybe I'll try it someday. But you know, I don't know. I tend to stick with trilogies, or if I do trek with a longer series, like I'll read like Harry Potter or Song of Ice and Fire. My main issue with George is that he tends to go on longer than he should. Does that make sense?
I disagree, but I see what you're saying.
Like, for instance, in Game of Thrones, he had a great story with Ned trying to trying to stop Joffrey from being the king, trying to do the right thing, gets killed for it, that's a great story right there. But no, he keeps going. You know, it's, oh yeah, now Rob's going to war. I'm like, you could have saved that for the next book, but you know. I've heard some people say he's written himself into a corner, and I don't know if I disagree, but
it's a tough one, especially whenever you're a gardener and you're kind of going at the seat of your pants. But I don't know. He has to figure it out. He's written about 75% of Winds of Winter that we know of, so it is what it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's also other fantasy authors out there I'd like to try, you know, Ursula K. Le Guin and, Roger Zelazny and, I mean, if you like Mieville, I don't know if you ever read Jeff Vandermeer's stuff. I haven't read his fantasy, but his science fiction is top-notch.
Yeah, I haven't read him yet, but he's on the short list for sure. I've only heard good things about
particularly Born and the Southern Reach books. Excellent stuff.
Nice.
One of those that reminds me why I enjoy science fiction as a genre, because I find with a lot of science fiction, a lot of people get super nerdy about the science, and it's like,
yeah, hard sci-fi. Yeah.
I know you read oh dang it, the Three Body Problem.
Yeah, Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy.
I've heard that's good. I haven't tried it though. It's funny. I mean, I like conceptual sci-fi, but I like character stuff. I like story, and sometimes I find sci-fi gets really it gets too focused on the concept.
Yeah, you will not like Three Body Problem.
Oh.
It is, the characters are very flat. It's the ideas. It's a meme at this point, but it's the ideas trilogy. So if you're looking for characters to get attached to, I like some of the characters, but they're not well-rounded or super three-dimensional. So I don't think you would like Three Body Problem. I
mean, like PKD, for example, I mean, I would say he really likes exploring concept, but man, he can write people. He can... Mm-hmm. He can create some really interesting characters, and
yeah, I would agree.
And surprisingly, he can write people very well. If like I like how he combines mundane people with these really strange situations. Though with Philip K. Dick, it's kind of I always like to say it's a stepping stone. Like start with stuff like Androids or Man in the High Castle. And then kind of build from there. I've had a friend who's like, I'm going to start with Valis, which is probably his most strange, esoteric, surreal work, which I haven't read yet, but I've heard it's insane. I think I heard my aunt laughing. But, yeah, no, she cackles like a witch. But, it's funny. I've said that. I'm like, you kind of sound like a witch from those movies, And she's like, oh, that's funny. I did read a book called The Black Tongue Thief, which is fun. Didn't love it, though.
Yeah, I read the synopsis, like the pitch for it, the little thing they put in the back of the book, and it didn't sound that interesting to me.
I mean, Another fantasy I'm looking forward to is Kings of the Wild, because I've heard, I'm like, you want fun? That's fun right there. Fun the book. With
it's
great
good.
characters.
I liked it.
Yeah, I know. I watched Daniel Green's review of it. I love the little first part where he's just sitting around drinking water, and then he breaks in and goes, read me, and he's like, bah! And it's good stuff. It's good stuff. But sadly, he doesn't really do as much book content anymore, so...
Yeah, I haven't seen anything from him in quite a while. Is he still doing One Piece?
I know he's still reading One Piece. I was actually talking with a friend of mine about One Piece last night. I'm like, yo, dude, the art style just looks fucking weird, man. And he's like, it is. He didn't even deny it. He's like, yo, but the story, bro. I'm like, okay, I believe you.
Read 1 million chapters first.
I know. I'm just like, dude, this book is so old, it could have its own kids. This is ridiculous. And he's like, I know, but it's worth it. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm like, dude, why should I read that when I can read Naoki Urasawa, who does that in like 100-something chapters? Like, I can manage that.
Yeah. Definitely different tones, right?
Though Berserk, I guess you could, I guess you could call me a hypocrite because I've gone through Berserk, though it took me a while because I had to hype myself up for that series. I'm like, so much.
Yeah, it's very long.
Like, I remember I read the first, like, arc, the Black Swordsman arc, read the first 3 volumes. I'm like, this is good, but, you know, I mean, that first volume was kind of like, uber, grim, dark, edgy.
Yeah,
it's so edgy.
Yeah, Black Swordsman arc is not as,
The next couple arcs after that are really good. Like, the stuff with the Count was pretty good. I enjoyed that. Then it gets better. So I'm just like, why didn't he just fucking start with the Golden Age arc?
Yeah, sometimes it takes people a while to figure it out, I guess.
I guess he hadn't found the tone yet. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I tend to read American comics more, like I said before. I'm actually hoping to reread Saga, because it's come back, and I've been meaning to do it for a while. I just haven't done it yet. So
yeah, I read the first 2 volumes of that, and really enjoyed it. I'll be continuing it.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's just, oh man, I like how Brian K. Vaughan can combine this just crazy, zany, like, he's so good at creating like fast moving plots, but you care about the characters and what's going on. That's hard to do in comics.
The hook in the first volume was really good.
Like, that's hard to do. Like, if you've read a lot of comics as I've had, you'll find it's hard to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, it's hard to do that in general, because you get so caught up in what's going on. So, what books have you read recently, and what books are you planning on reading? Because I know we're coming up. Because I know you wanted to like do this for like an hour and a half at longest. So I just wanted to ask you that. What books would you want to read, my good sir? And what books have you been reading?
So I've been reading Curse of Chalian by Lois McMaster Bujold, and I'm also in the middle of Wise Man's Fear. Not in the middle, really at the beginning. So I'm reading those right now. I just read the Long Price Quartet and finished up that 4-book series when it was really, really good. And on the horizon, I'm probably going to be reading Trader Boru Cormorant, and I may start either Gormenghast or Book of the New Sun. And then I'm going to be reading Iron Council in June, so I'm really pumped for that.
I do bid you good luck with Iron Council.
I hope it's good.
Like I said, it's more experimental than the other 2 Bas-Lag books. Gormenghast, I'm actually planning on starting that next year because, well, the version I got for Christmas, thank you Mom and Dad, is the omnibus. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Heard it's very good, very dense.
Yeah, I've heard the writing is just gorgeous, so I'm excited to kind of just let that one wash over me, not be too worried about what's going on, and just...
Book of the New Sun, I've heard Gene Wolfe is good. I read one of his books a few years ago, and I just did not like it. There was a muddy hand, but I had no idea what was going on. It was like a travelogue.
That is what I hear about his books. I hear they're very confusing.
And people were like, yo, dude, you should try Book of the New Sun, or some of his like fantasy work. I'm like, okay, maybe someday, but that one book I was like, this sucks. Like, I don't like this. And then there's a blurb from Ursula K. Le Guin, he's our Melville. I'm like, are you fucking serious? Okay, fine, maybe it is, because I don't fucking like Moby Dick.
You're not a big fan of whaling?
No, just I might have to read it again at some point, but it's just there's so much, and it's just so what's the word? Dense, verbose, yes. It doesn't get to the point, which is sort of the point, because it kind of wants to put you in the mind of somebody who is a whaler, and just how that can drive you insane after a while. It's I don't like Moby Dick. I do like classics though. I'm one of those people who do like classics.
Mm-hmm. Blood Meridian makes a lot of references to Moby Dick. So
yes.
that could be a good reason to reread it. You might see some Blood Meridian in there.
Yes, I know, like, they say, like, the judge is, like, the white whale, though, I'm like, what? But, yeah, I know I know McCarthy really likes Moby Dick. I just have never been able to wrap my head around it.
I think a lot of people dislike Moby Dick, especially when they're forced to read it in high school.
I joked with a friend, I'm like, it's too dense for me. For you? Yeah, no. And he starts dicking around with me. He's all like, for you? The genius, sir? I'm like, I didn't mean it like that. I just mean I read a lot of books that... I tend to be adventurous in my reading, but there are some times I have to just... Okay.
You gotta know when enough is enough.
A man's gotta know his limits.
A lot of books to read.
And, yeah, no. I saw you and Alan did a video. Maybe I'll get Alan on this show at some point, but we're not really acquainted. I watch his videos, and he's a very passionate man, which I appreciate.
Yes, Alan's the best. I love him dearly. He's one of my best friends.
I love this monster because he's all like, oh man, Johan, bro.
Dr. Tinma.
Dr. Tinma. Yeah. I love Monster.
Yeah.
But you read a book from one of the guys who did The Expanse, which is another series I've heard. Oh man, great stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'll try it someday. That's another one. I'm like, maybe I'll try that someday, but I'm not in any rush. Now
Quartet's really good.
Now that quartet you guys were talking about, I'm like, okay, I think I could do that. 4 books, that's not bad.
4 books, and it comes in at like 1,000 pages. So.
Oh shit.
Exactly. Like, I don't understand why more people don't try it out, because it's a low investment, really.
I thought you meant like 1,000 pages for like the book. The book is 1,000 pages, or it's just 1,000 pages?
All 4 together is like 1,000 pages.
Oh.
So you could read all 4 of them for 1,000 pages.
Okay, I'm like, what? Oh.
Shorter than a Stormlight book.
Yeah. I'm not really interested in Sanderson, though. The only book that's really like intrigued me to read it is Mistborn, because it was called "What If the Dark Overlord Wins?" And I'm like, ooh, I kind of want to see how that would work.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool plot stuff in Mistborn.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just I've seen some of his videos, and like Brandon Sanderson seems like a really cool guy, but it's just his approach to writing is a lot different to how I approach it and how I approach story. So I don't know if I would enjoy him.
Yeah, he'd be pretty much opposite to China Mieville, I would say.
Yeah, no. Though his work ethic is insane, though. I envy that man.
It is. Also a fairly creative person, I would say.
Yeah, no, but like Mistborn's the only one that's really interested me, because it's like, oh, what if the Dark Lord won? What would that be like? And I'm like, that actually sounds interesting. Maybe I'll try that at some point.
Yeah, I like the first Mistborn book. Pretty good.
Yeah, I was talking with my mom the other day about one of the books I'm reading, which is like 400-something pages right now. It's called The Changeling. And she's like, oh, what are you reading? And I told her, and she's like, oh, it looks a little thick, doesn't it? And I'm like 400-something pages ain't that long to me.
It's a breeze.
She's like, well, it's for her, because it was just funny, because it's like we have very different like she's not much of a reader. Me, I'm an avid reader, so she's like, oh well, 400 seems like a lot to me. I'm like, oh, that's a fucking breeze for me. Like 600, 700, 800 onward, that's long. Like that's a challenge.
Yeah, different perceptions, right?
And it's like, and it wasn't me flexing, I was just being honest. I'm just like, hey man, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
But like Brian Lee Durfee's work, I could get into that, but it's very long. So I'm like, that could be kind of challenging.
Yeah, I need to read the 3rd book, but I feel like I need to read the first 2 again, because I can't remember a lot of the details.
Love the cover art. Richard Anderson, I think is the guy's name.
Super good. Those covers are awesome.
I would love to see him do a Bas-Lag cover. Oh.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Oh. Though China Mieville is probably like, probably wouldn't mind. He's probably like, whatever, you know. But yeah, no, it's there's a lot. There's so much for me to read. It's ridiculous, you know.
Yeah, we'll never run out of books that we want to read, which is a nice problem to have.
I am hoping this summer to read The Rage of Dragons, because I've heard from a few people that it's really good. So.
Yeah, it's very fast, you know, combat-oriented, revenge tale. I happen to enjoy it a lot. I don't like it nearly as hyperbolically, if that's a word, as I did like 3 years ago, but I still enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, though, to be fair, I'm kind of nervous that it'll be ruined because I loved Black Leopard, Red Wolf so much, and that book just blew me away. I'm kind of nervous that The Rage of Dragons might just not have the same effect.
Well, I have not read the Leopard book, but I can tell you just from what you've told me that they're trying to accomplish two very different things.
Oh,
so I wouldn't expect them to be similar at all.
Though, from what it sounds like, kind of sounds like if Abercrombie did a African kind of.
No. It's really not. It's a thrills and kills type deal. You know, there is some good emotional stakes there.
Well, I do like that. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, it's a good time. Like, it's high octane. It's 1,000 miles an hour. It's the only book I think I've ever read that was like longer than like 200 pages in like a day, like within 24 hours. It's just, for me, it was very bingeable. So.
Oh well, that's good to know. I guess.
But he's not on the same level as like a Joe Abercrombie for me. Like, just writing wise, like his writing's not as polished.
All right. I mean, what's funny about Joe Abercrombie is like I don't really care for the term grimdark. I don't even think it's really a thing. It's just dark fantasy to me. But I mean, if there is such a thing as grimdark, like Joe Abercrombie, he does it like that. When he does it well.
At least the most commercially viable example, I'd say.
Which is funny because he's kind of like, I don't really like that term all that much.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's I've heard Best Served. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Best Served Cold. I'll put it that way. After reading Last Arguments of Kings, I'm very much looking forward to Best Served Cold.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a lot faster and way tighter of a plot than the trilogy.
That's what I've heard. I've heard it's more plot driven, which I'm like, oh, that could be interesting. Oh, if the characters are just as good, oh man, great package. That's the best bet. Yeah, no, I mean Joe Abercrombie. It was one of those like it was so like he's such a popular, you know, writer now. I was kind of like, oh boy, you know, I'm like, all right, let's see what you got. I read Blade itself. It sucked me in. I'm just like, oh, I gotta see it. Damn you.
Yeah, if you're someone who likes that character focus, he's one of the better ones to do it, in my opinion.
I mean, you know, now I'm reading Red Seas Under Red Skies. I keep getting that mixed up.
I do too.
Oh my gosh, stupid alliteration. I'm sorry, my cat. Stupid alliteration. But I'm enjoying it so far. It's funny. I want to see what happens. I like that John just basically snaps Locke out of his bullshit. But, you know, it's good stuff. I'm like, I think this will be a good book.
Yeah, I really I liked it just as much as the first one.
Is it to the level of The Scar in terms of seafaring fantasy?
The Scar's better, I think.
I had a feeling you'd say that. Yeah, no, I mean, I love The Scar. You know, I've grown to love The Scar. It's a great book.
It really is.
Are there other genres you enjoy? I should ask this real quick before we wrap this up.
I mean, I like contemporary fiction a lot. I like historical fiction. I'm not nearly as well read in, but I have enjoyed what I've read of it. And then on top of that, I would say that westerns appeal to me. I'm probably gonna read Lonesome Dove next year. And then horror. I like horror as well. Stephen Graham Jones is really cool. Obviously, I like Stephen King a lot. So, you know, I'll try mostly anything. I don't read a lot of nonfiction because I used to read it all the time, and I just like less and less interested in it. The nonfiction kind of content I like to consume is usually through YouTube videos and documentaries. So,
Stop. Sorry, my cat's biting at me.
you're
Your punishment. You're going on the floor, kitty. But yeah, I'm the same way. I'll try anything. Just, I mean, I have genres I like. I also really enjoy westerns, which is why I'm looking forward to Red Country.
Yeah, you'll like Red Country.
I know there were some people who didn't care for it, and mostly it was because they didn't like westerns. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I like S. Craig Zahler's stuff in terms of westerns, though they're really violent, so... Always finding new things to read. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the TBR is always growing.
Yeah, no. The other day I saw a book about oh man, it's about it was like the West or British East Indies Company, and I took a picture of it and I added it to my TBR on Goodreads. So
nice.
There you go. But yeah, it's yeah. Yeah. How's Bobby B doing?
He's good.
He's good.
He's great.
I see him.
Yeah.
I see him behind you.
Yeah, he's doing great.
I'll admit he is one of my favorite characters. So makes me sad when he dies, even though he isn't like a good person.
Oh yeah, he's my favorite king, no doubt.
I wouldn't say he's a great guy, but oh man, fun.
Oh, you know, he's certainly a bastard, but
and Mark Addy just fucking killed it in the show. Like, oh my god, he was amazing.
Yeah, it's my favorite part of the show, to be honest.
It was my favorite part of season 1. I was so sad when he died. I was like, oh man, fucking Cersei.
Yeah, I knew it was coming and still hurt.
Fucking Cersei. No, but yeah, this has been a great chat, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Would you say
we got to do it twice?
Would you say we're friends?
Yeah, I mean, online friends, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a weird thing where, you know, we know each other in like a certain space, so you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
How deep do the interests intertwine? But yeah, we're definitely friends, man.
I sometimes get nervous that I annoy people because I'll text you being like, yo, this book's crazy, and you'll be like 100%. You're probably just busier than me, but you know.
Yeah, I get a lot of messages, so
that's fair.
I have to kind of balance that between interacting with all my YouTube comments, other things. Like I always have to find time, you know, for everyone. So
I know,
it's
yeah.
really difficult.
I'm like, there's most people who are busier than me. I mean, I don't have a lot to do in my spare. That's why I read a lot. So there you go. But yeah, thanks for coming on again. Thanks for being patient with my wacky antics, though. And the wacky antics of the internet. I'll put it that way.
It was a pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
But yeah, Jimmy, if you wanna, before you go, if you wanna share your stuff real quick, that I usually let people do that before.
Yeah, you can check me out over on the Fantasy Network here on YouTube, and then also you can check out Dudes Talking Manga. That's a separate channel where I cover all manga stuff, and I also have a Song of Ice and Fire podcast called Bend the Knee with my good friend Sir Matt, and we have a YouTube channel, and you can go check it out, but it's predominantly a podcast. That's where most of our viewers / fans are. So check out any of those projects if you want to hear me babble on about more fantasy stuff.
Awesome. We should do this again sometime.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Though I like to wait before I have guests on again, so. But, yeah, thank you, Jimmy, for being patient, and thank you for coming on again. I appreciate it. I enjoyed this chat.
Hey, man, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
All right, you take care.
You too.
All right, see you guys later. Goodbye now.
See ya.